we'll start again. I am slightly colorblind. All right? So I was watching a video of a young man taking an online color test. And as I watched that young man take that test, he had a friend on the, I think it's a Discord server where they can play games together and talk to each other, and it's a neat thing. And they're just talking, and so he's seeing his friend's screen. And as he's taking this test, and you know this test, it's got the circle with all the different camouflage-looking things, and it'll show a number in a different color. And it's difficult. For me, those have always been difficult, certain colors. And so as he was saying what number he saw, some of them he would get to, and he said, I don't even see one. And it would be plain as day to me. There's different gradients and different colors that people have issues with. And his friend would laugh and say, are you serious? You're playing. He goes, I promise I'm not playing. I can't see any. But then he would get to some, and he couldn't see them, and I couldn't see them either. And I thought it was just a circle. You know, me and Amanda got a good laugh one time at an eye doctor, and she went through all the colors, and I guessed on some of them on what I thought they might be. And she said, well, you have no issues with color blindness. My wife said, you ought to have been married to him. He can't even match his clothes together. But anyways, as he went through that, and I couldn't see some of the numbers that he couldn't see, and then others that he could see, I couldn't see at all. And I thought, we're all affected by what we see in life. And really, God is the only one that can see out in front of us. We're affected, if you'll let me say it, with the handicap of being finite, of being not all-knowing. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going on in the future. We just don't know. But God knows. And so that young man who was saying, well, that's a 1. Are you serious? That's a 3. I can't believe you can't see that. God, he can see all the colors. He can see everything that goes on in our lives. And as I say that, I want to encourage you tonight with this message that I believe is really fitting for today, this hour. Exodus 4 and verse number 18. And we're going to keep going, keep preaching out of Moses' life. And I've just been enjoying, and the Lord has been speaking to me through these chapters that we've been preaching out of here lately. And if you missed any of these, you can get on YouTube and watch them. And not that they're that great, but just for you to have the continuity of Moses' life here. And we'll start in verse number 18 of Exodus 4. And Moses went and returned to Jethro his father-in-law, and said unto him, let me go, I pray thee, and return unto my brethren which are in Egypt, and see whether they be yet alive. And Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. And the Lord said unto Moses in Midian, go, return into Egypt, for all the men are dead which sought thy life. And Moses took his wife and his sons, and set them upon an ass, and he returned to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the rod of God in his hand. And the Lord said unto Moses, when thou goest to return into Egypt, see that thou do all those wonders before Pharaoh, which I have put in thine hand, and I will harden his heart, that he shall not let the people go. And thou shalt say unto Pharaoh, thus saith the Lord, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. And I say unto thee, let my son go, that he may serve me. And if thou refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay thy son, even thy firstborn. And it came to pass by the way, in the end, that the Lord met him and sought to kill him. Then Zipporah, that's his wife, took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it at his feet, and said, surely a bloody husband art thou to me. So he let him go. Then she said, a bloody husband thou art because of the circumcision. And the Lord said to Aaron, go into the wilderness to meet Moses. And he went and met him in the mount of God and kissed him. And Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord who had sent him and all the signs which he had commanded him. And Moses and Aaron went and gathered together all the elders of the children of Israel. And Aaron spake all the words which the Lord had spoken unto Moses, and did the signs in the sight of the people. And the people believed. And when they heard that Moses had that the Lord had visited the children of Israel, and that he had looked upon their affliction, then they bowed their heads and worshipped. Praise the Lord for his word. I want to preach the Lord being my helper for a few moments, and I pray that we won't feel like we wasted our time tonight. We've worshiped God, and that's surely worthwhile. And we're going to continue worshiping by dwelling on his word here for a few moments. I want to preach the Lord being my helper on assured by the Almighty. Assured by the Almighty. There is so many things, even on this last read through that I just read, that I feel bouncing out at me, and I have no doubt that I won't retain them all, but I pray that the Lord will bring it back. As I read that, I was seeing things for the first time, even though I've read this several times. But though it took some convincing, Moses agrees to go forward with what God has called him to do. And God knew that Moses was struggling with this call that God had given him. He was struggling with fear and different things, but God speaks directly to this need in Moses' life. And I have seen this happen over and over again in my life. As I struggle with something, God speaks right to that struggle. And if I'm sensitive to him, I recognize it and I receive strength from it. But he speaks into Moses' life as sweet assurance to him. And God is speaking assurance to his children today. We live in a time that is scary. It is a time that is distracting at the very least. It is a time where if we allow ourselves, we can feel overwhelmed at any moment of any day. If we focus on the news, we are overwhelmed. If we focus on what's going on in families that we know and are friends with, we can be overwhelmed. But even in that overwhelming time that we find ourselves in, I feel such a sweet assurance from God that everything's going to be all right. I can stand on God's word and declare that to be truth, that everything is going to be all right. I believe that, and I believe God is speaking that to his church tonight. And as God spoke to Moses, God did some things, and I want us to recognize them. If you'll help me here, if you'll stick with me rather here, steps as you respond to God's voice. Steps while God is assuring you. Here are some steps to do, all right? We need to be certain it is God's proclamation. Be certain it is God's proclamation. I hope that wasn't a bug. I just ate. Lord, help us here. That's distracted me horribly. I don't know what it was, but it was not what I wanted. Praise the Lord. Be certain it is God's proclamation. That might be a first. Chuck Swindoll, he said it this way. Y'all know he's one of my favorites. He said, God's voice isn't all that difficult to hear. In fact, you almost have to be closing your eyes and stopping your ears to miss it. He sometimes shouts through our pain, whispers to us while we're relaxing on vacation. Occasionally, he sings to us in a song and warns us through all the 66 books of his written word. God speaks to his children. I have seen God do that in my own life, even with the sheep that are across the way here. As I was pacing these aisles, I don't know if I've told you this, but as I was pacing these aisles, praying, seeking God about a certain desire and need that I had in my life, I felt a check in my spirit. Y'all can say what you will. Someone can say what you will. I know y'all will believe this, but I felt a check in my spirit to watch the sheep. And so I just pulled a chair out and I sat and I watched the sheep as I talked to God. And I felt God speak directly into my heart from watching those sheep, exactly what I was praying to him about in that moment. And it was such a special time, and I thought, man, Lord, those sheep have been across the way the whole time I've lived at the corner of Broughton and Jordan Road. The whole time they've been over there. I know he locks them up, but during the nice weather, we see them often. We can hear them calling, even when I work out of this office, when our internet's cooperating. I can hear them, and sometimes I think it's one of my children crying. It's been 2 or 3 times I've ran out that door and ran to where I thought I heard one of my babies crying, and it was one of those dumb sheep over there talking out loud to me. And I'm just shaking my head, and now I'll listen a little bit more carefully when I hear it, because they usually do it over and over again. And God speaks in a variety of ways. I've loved the story of a pastor down in Texas, and he said he was praying and struggling over something in his life, and he was wanting, it was a big old brand new SUV that he was wanting, and he had found something that was used, and it was about what he wanted, and so he said, I'll just get that, it's a better deal. And he felt a check in his spirit, no, don't buy it. And he said, oh, it's a great deal, I can't pass it up. So he started reasoning with God. And he said, this song came on the radio as he was going. It was a Christian song that was popular back in the 90s, and I can't for my life remember it now. And it said, don't do it in the song. It said it. And he thought, well, that's just, and down in Texas, it ain't like here. They got quite a few Christian radio stations, especially in that major metropolis that he lives in. He said he changed the radio station, and that same exact song was on the next Christian radio station. And that same exact part came on when he flipped it over. Don't do it. He did it again a 3rd time, and that same exact song was on the radio station telling him, don't do it. And he said, I fixed it. I turned it to talk radio on the AM dial, and I didn't hear that song. He said he went on to say, I went ahead and bought that thing, and it was the biggest headache in my life. And he said, what I didn't know was after I had finally got sick of pouring money into that big old SUV, he said, I sold it and got rid of it, and a man out of his church came up to him and said, Pastor, I see that you sold your car. He said, I've got the same SUV, but it ain't had near the problems, and it's a couple years newer, and I was just going to give it to you about 6 months ago, but then you bought that other one, and I thought I had missed God, so I just said, no, I'll just hold on to it. Ain't that crazy? I tell you, sometimes God speaks to us in the most peculiar ways. Moses heard God out of a burning bush. He heard directly from God. And there's the thing, we need to be certain when we hear from God that it is God. Verse number 19, it says, God speaking to him, all the men that sought thy life are dead. That's important that it was really God speaking to him. Because if that was not a true word, if he went back to Egypt, and even if just one of those men were alive that were seeking his life, it would have meant the end of his ministry maybe in that case. But God had all things planned out. Do you see? It is so important to be certain that it is God's proclamation. Secondly, we need those steps we take as we respond to God's voice. We need to be confident in God's power. It's so important. Man, the Lord has spoken to me through these verses this week. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. It is a very common verse, but it is so good. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart. Lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. That is a before and after proverb. It says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart. And at the end of those 2 verses, it says, and he shall direct thy paths. Trust comes before that, though, doesn't it? It is a conditional clause in the Word of God. Do you notice that what Solomon places in contrast to trusting the Lord with all of your heart? It is leaning not to your own understanding. See, he juxtapositions those against it. And he says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart on this side. Lean not to thine own understanding on the other. That is the exact opposite of trusting in God then, is leaning to our own understanding. Sometimes we can so lean on our own understanding that we miss out on the blessings that come with trusting God. Lord, help us. Help me to follow you here, Lord. Man came to me a few years ago, and he said, are you sure you're ready? Are you sure you're ready? And when the baton was about to be passed here, and I really thought about that statement, and I asked that man, I said, were you ready? When the baton was handed to you, were you ready? And there is something to be said for being ready and being as ready as you can be. But there is something else with trusting God when you don't know what you're doing. You just know that He's called you to it. Imagine the fear that gripped Peter's heart on the day of Pentecost. Just because he had just got baptized with the Holy Ghost don't mean that he forgot the last 50, 60 days. The same guy that maybe a girl, Selena's size, came up to him and said, I saw you with the Master. And he said, I don't know him, and ran, fearful of what a little girl could say, fearful of what she could bring down. But he got up. I don't think he was ready in his flesh to preach to thousands that morning. But I think he stepped out in faith, and God blessed that he was trusting in God with all of his heart and not leaning to his own understanding. That conversation, that the man that had asked me that smiled, and he said, no, I wasn't. And I said, I'm right about there. I'm right about there. I don't know what will happen. I don't know if I'll do a great job. I don't know what will happen, but here's one thing that I do know, is that God has called me to something here. That's what I know. And so I didn't lean to my own understanding. I can't tell you how many people have asked me questions and about the will of God, and how can you just say these things? How can you step out in faith like you have? It's not confidence in myself. And I have wavered in my faith so often I'm ashamed sometimes of myself. But there is one thing that I know, that I can be confident in God's power. I quote it all the time, and so do most Christians. But greater is He that is in me than he that's in the world. Though, hey, this world, we might not be ready to do something. We might not be ready to step out. I remember the fear a couple summers ago on that first day at the park. I remember the absolute fear at Warsaw Park when we set up the chairs and what was gripping me. And I hope it didn't show. I hope my hands didn't shake as bad as the inside of me was shaking. But I was thinking, Lord, what if we face opposition here? What if somebody gets mad and starts yelling and screaming? I don't want to create a scene. I don't want to offend nobody and hurt nobody away from you. But there is one thing that I knew, that I was drawn, that we were drawn as a church body to accomplish that ministry. And what did we get for the whole year? We got a man and his dog. We got a man and his dog that sat with us in the park. But praise God, there was something about that man and his dog that encouraged me that afternoon, that evening, that said, God, if it was just for the one, Lord, you know know what's happening. We can have confidence in God's power that we might not see what we want to see, but we know that God can accomplish what He wants to accomplish. Hallelujah. We can be confident in God's power, and we can be comfortable, lastly, in God's plan. We can be comfortable in God's plan. I guarantee you, in Moses' life, there was one thing for sure: fear. Just because he stepped out didn't mean there wasn't fear inside of him. You understand that? I know God has not given us the spirit of fear, but He did make us human beings. He did make us human beings. He knows that we have fear when things that are uncomfortable to us or out of our known realm come in front of us. He knows that. But Moses, one thing I noticed, that when he went to his father-in-law and said, hey, I need to go back to Egypt. I want to see my brethren. He didn't mention anything about the burning bush. Did you notice that? I wonder if he was like, this guy's going to call me a nutcase. He's a priest of Midian. He ain't a Jew. He don't believe exactly how I believe. So I'm not going to tell him, I just need to go see my family. That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. God just called me out of a burning bush that was not consumed to go and preach deliverance to Israel, to confront the most powerful king in the world and say, let God's people go. He didn't tell them all that. He just said, I'm going to go on a vacation to see my family. There was fear involved in Moses' life, but there had to be faith present for him to step out. Faith is what Moses responded with. And because he responded with faith, even in the presence of fear, God gave His sweet assurance to Moses. Here, we'll hurry up with this. But God assured Moses first with His commands or His words. Verse number 19 through 23, He talks to him and He says, you go to Egypt. Those men are dead. You go. And when you get there, I'll tell you what to say. You do those wonders. God dealt with him with His word. There is something we can find, God's plan in His word. It's not some vast mystery to find the will of God for our lives. It's found in His word. It's found in His word. So with God's command, we can find assurance in it. Secondly, with His chastisement, I believe He assured Moses. With His chastisement, the Bible says along the way, at the end. So he had used his points, Brother Buzzy, and he had found a Motel 6 on the way. And he had went in there, and I don't know what it was, if it was a wrestling match, because it says when He let him go. So I don't know if it was a wrestling match. I don't know if it was a sickness, whatever it was. But death or a sickness, a near-death experience, a sickness came about on Moses because, and we find the reason because of the actions of his wife, because Moses had skipped the circumcision of his son. He had been away from the Jews for so long that he started living as the Midianites, and he had not consecrated his son as sons were to be consecrated in the Jewish religion. He had not consecrated him unto God. So Moses in his sickness tells his wife what to do. She does it. She's angry because it is against her people's customs. And she throws the evidence of it at Moses' feet. And the Bible says that God lets him go. The chastisement is taken from him. Now, I have been whipped in my life. But I've never thought, maybe a couple times, but not really. I've never thought that during the whipping I was going to die. All right, my brother caught a beating one time. I think he thought he was going to die, but we won't talk about that here. There is something in him, that chastisement that came about. He knew, the Bible said, that he might die, that he was sick, so sick. And his wife answered the chastisement. And because he yielded to the word of God, God took that off of him. See, that was an assurance that God was in the middle of what was going on. See, that sickness that came, or that wrestling match that came, it left when Moses obeyed the word of God. That was an assurance to him. If I'll obey him, I'm going to make it. Along each step of the way, with God's leadership, he was assured. He said, hey, you want your brother to speak for you? Or you want a spokesman for you? I'll send your brother. As a matter of fact, I've already sent him because I knew you were going to be full of excuses. So I sent him your way. He's already on his way. Go meet him. And he went and met his brother. 40 years later, they had a great family reunion there. And with God conducting the way, he was assured that God's plan was best. And then the agreement of the people. Verse 29 through 31, his biggest fear, the very first verse of this chapter, he said, they will not believe me. They ain't going to believe me, Lord. I'm not going to woo them with my words. And God says, all right, here's what you do. And so Moses did the here's what you do. And God brought it about that the Israelite people would agree with Moses and say, all right, God is mark on you. We believe you. Every step of that journey, God was assuring Moses. And here's the thing. Not all of that was pleasant. Brother Brandon exhorted tonight. And I was so excited. Y'all know how us preachers are. We need a little bit of confirmation. That's the word that we need in a service. God, give us some confirmation for what I'm about to preach, because I think I'm about to swing and miss here tonight. I got that sweet, sweet confirmation, that assurance from the Lord when he said, God knows what he's doing. God knows what's best. God knows the right way to do things. Moses, I know you're scared, but if you'll follow my commands. Moses, I know you haven't done everything right, so I'm going to paddle you a little bit, and then you're going to come out when it changes your heart. Moses, I know that you're worried about your speech problem, as I am right now, but I'm going to send Aaron your way, and I'm going to conduct your path so Aaron will speak for you. Moses, I know that you're afraid that my people will not believe you, so when you get there, here's some signs that you show them and they will believe you. Every single step from the start to the finish of his journey was God telling Moses, you can trust me. And I believe in all of our lives, it is the same way, that each and every step, even the hard things, we can believe God for what he's doing by the way he assures us of his presence. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart. Lean not to thine own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, Moses. That's why he needed to go about that custom that was common to Jews, was because he hadn't acknowledged him in all his ways. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. That's why we need to be careful, church. I feel that as the day approaches, we don't have to get right if we live right, right? We don't have to worry about the second coming of the Lord if we're living right before the Lord now. In all your ways acknowledge him. What does that mean? In everything that I say, I've got to be careful that it won't bring shame to Christ's name. In the way I conduct myself, in the way I treat others, in the way of everyday life, I need to acknowledge him, and I know that he will direct my path. See, Moses was being taken out of the known and placed into the unknown. The sheep fields were common to him, but God knew what was best for him. I don't imagine this was an exciting time for Moses. It was a fearful time. It was a time full of uncertainty. But God had a plan for his life. And I'll let us all in on something, and I believe we all know this. But often God's plan for our life involves us sacrificing part of ourselves for him. I have found that every step of the way. God's plan for my life is one of much sacrifice. Much sacrifice. Brother Thomas Hammond, he wrote a book recently, and I got to start reading it, and I've so enjoyed it. And he's talking about ministry and different things. It's just really encouraged me, and I need to buy more copies of it. But he said this in the second chapter of his book, I believe. He says, messages titled Living Your Dream are far more prevalent than the ones called Dying to Yourself. That it's true, ain't it? You get on major ministries, and you can see that. I believe that if our dream is doing something for God, it's all right to preach those kind of things. But there's also another part that Paul wrote about, and he said it was such a frequent sermon that he had to preach to himself that it was daily. I die to myself daily. I die to my flesh. I crucify my flesh daily. He said, "Oh, wretched man that I am, that this body of death that's attached to me. I don't want this attached to me." So I wanted to encourage us tonight that even the difficult things in life brings God's assurance that everything's going to be all right. Even the hard times, even the plagues that have seemed to come against our world, God knows all about it. And even in the plague, we can find God's promises being fulfilled. Dr. F.E. Marsh, he said this, the will of God, nothing less, nothing more, and nothing else. That's what I want for my life. Stand with me if you will. Thank you for your patience tonight. God, I love you. I'm thankful for your word. Thank you, Jesus, that you are not a harsh taskmaster. But God, you've showed us a life of sacrifice when you sent your Son to come and dwell among men. It was a life, a complete life of sacrifice. God, tonight I want to yield my body to you, Lord. I want to yield my will to you in the name of Jesus. Thank you for the human element in the Scriptures. Moses wasn't a perfect man, but he was a man that sought to yield his life to you. God, I pray that we will be a church of people that are yielded to you. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. Why don't we find a place to pray around these altars, church? Let's be consecrated unto the Lord.
Trust and obey. said to Moses, I am that I am has sent you. Oh, there's no need to fear what men say, simply trust and obey. Oh, trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy. Oh, oh, trust and obey, for He's working things together for your good. Oh, answer His call, give Him your all, carry the cross, be it great or small. Don't worry what others may say, simply trust and obey. Oh, trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy. Oh, oh, trust and obey, for He's working things together for your good. Oh, answer His call, give Him your all, carry the cross, be it great or small. Don't worry what others may say, simply trust and obey. Every step I take is a step of faith. When I can't see what's in front of me, I'll walk on and just believe He hears my prayer. And when I get there, the miracle promised by my Father is waiting in the water. Every step I take is a step of faith. When I can't see what's in front of me, I'll walk on and just believe He hears my prayer. And when I get there, the miracle that's promised by my Father is waiting in the water. Every step I take is a step of faith. When I can't see what's in front